Level 1, the winner. You're standing in a gas station. It's a Tuesday night. You're buying a bag of chips and a drink because you just got off a 10-hour shift and you don't feel like cooking. You can't afford to eat out. You haven't been able to afford to eat out in months. Your rent went up again in January. Your car needs new brakes. New brakes cost $400. So you press harder and hope. You have $263 in your checking account. It's the 19th of the month. You do the math every time you buy something. The chips are $4.29. The drink is $2.19. You can afford that. Barely. The lottery is at $400 million. You don't usually play. You tell yourself it's a tax on people who are bad at math. But tonight, you feel something. Not hope. Something more desperate than hope. You hand the cashier $2 and say, "Give me a quick pick." She prints the ticket without looking at you. You fold it into your wallet between a gas receipt and an old gift card that probably has nothing on it. You forget about it. You go home. You eat your chips on the couch. You fall asleep with the TV on. 2 days later, you see the numbers. You look at your ticket. You look at the phone. You look at the ticket again. Your hands are shaking. All 6 numbers match. You don't scream. You don't jump. You sit very still for a long time. $412 million. Before taxes. You say the number out loud and it sounds fake. You don't sleep that night. You hide the ticket in a book. Then a Ziploc bag in the freezer. Then the glove box. Then back inside. You are terrified of losing a piece of paper. The next morning you call in sick. You open your laptop. The first result says get a lawyer before you do anything else. The second says don't tell anyone. You close the laptop. You sit in your kitchen. This time, you listen. Level 2, the architect. You find an attorney who specializes in high net worth estates and asset protection. Not your cousin. Not the billboard guy. The right one. His office is on the 22nd floor. He charges $600 an hour. 2 weeks ago, that number would have made you dizzy. Now, it is the most important $600 you will ever spend. He explains everything. Revocable trusts, blind trusts, LLC structures. He draws diagrams on a whiteboard and you don't understand 70% of it. But you understand the part that matters. If you walk into the lottery office as yourself, your life is over. The trust claims the prize. Your name stays out of it. You go to the lottery commission with your attorney beside you. Drop ceiling tiles, government carpet. A woman behind a desk scans your ticket and her expression doesn't change. You choose the lump sum. Everyone does. $412 million becomes $206 million after the discount. Federal taxes take 37%. State takes another 7%. Your $412 million is now $118 million. Your attorney told you this would happen. You are not surprised. You are not angry. You expected this. Expecting things is the first skill you are learning. The money settles into an account held by the trust. Your name is nowhere on the public record. You drive home in the same car with the brakes that need fixing. You don't fix them yet. You're not ready to start spending. You're not ready for anything except the next right step. Level 3. The ghost. You tell nobody. Not your mother. Not your brother. Not your best friend. Nobody. This is the hardest thing you have ever done, and nothing has even started yet. You sit on $118 million and you go back to work on Thursday. You smile at your coworkers. You eat lunch at your desk. You drive home in the car with the bad brakes. You are a ghost inside your own life, and you choose to stay that way for exactly 90 days. Your attorney recommended 90 days. Long enough to build the structure. Long enough for the news cycle to move on. long enough for you to stop feeling like you might combust every time someone asks how your week is going. You use those 90 days. You hire a financial planner who works exclusively with sudden wealth recipients. She has seen this before: lottery winners, lawsuit settlements, inheritance. She knows what happens to people who don't wait. She makes you read 3 books before she'll take your first real meeting. You read them. You fix the brakes on your car. You do not buy a new car. Not yet. Not until the structure is built and the plan is written and you understand exactly what you have and exactly what it means. 90 days of silence, 90 days of learning. It is the most important 90 days of your life, and from the outside it looks like nothing happened at all. Level 4, the student. Your financial planner lays it out clearly. $118 million invested conservatively generates $4 to $5 million a year in passive income. Forever. Without touching the principal. $4 million a year is $333,000 a month. You will never need to work again. Your children will never need to work. Their children will never need to work. But first, you have to understand what you have. She doesn't let you invest $1 until you can explain back to her why each decision is being made. Index funds, bonds, real estate investment trusts, treasury securities, diversification, not as a buzzword, but as a principle you actually grasp. You spend 2 months learning before a single dollar moves. It is boring. It is unglamorous. It feels like homework, and it is the most valuable homework you have ever done. When the portfolio is finally built, it looks nothing like what you imagined. No single stock bets, no startup investments, no real estate developments in countries you've never visited. It looks like a spreadsheet. Carefully weighted, deliberately dull. Your planner calls it a machine. You build it once and you maintain it, and it runs. You don't need to chase returns. You don't need to be clever. You just need to not break the machine. You do not break the machine. Level 5, the boundary. The silence ends. You tell your mother first, then your brother, then your best friend. 3 people. That is the list. That is the whole list. You tell them the number. You watch their faces change. You watch them try to recalibrate everything they thought they knew about you. Your mother cries. Your best friend goes very quiet for a long time and then says, "Okay, what do you need from me?" You will remember that response for the rest of your life. Your brother asks if you can invest in his restaurant idea. You say no. You say it kindly. You say it clearly. You say it without guilt, because your financial planner helped you rehearse this exact conversation 3 weeks ago. You have a number, a family giving number. It is fixed, it is generous, it is not negotiable, and it is not a starting point for a conversation. You pay off your mother's house, you set up college funds for your nieces and nephews. You write one check to your brother that is enough to matter and not enough to save him from himself. Then the boundary closes. The calls come. Old friends, distant cousins, a co-worker's husband with a business opportunity. You screen them all. You have an attorney who handles the letters. You have a system. The system is not cold. It is not cruel. It is the thing that lets you stay sane while still being a person who gives a damn. You don't read every letter anymore. Someone else does. They flag the ones that need attention. The rest are handled with a form response and a modest contribution to a legitimate charity in the writer's name. You sleep at night. That is not nothing. Level 6, the giver. You set up a foundation, not immediately, not out of guilt. You spend 4 months working with an attorney who specializes in nonprofit law. to build it correctly from the start. It has a board. It has an application process. It has a mission statement that is specific enough to mean something and narrow enough to protect it. You fund it with $10 million. Enough to do real work. Not so much that it becomes unmanageable. The focus is financial literacy in low-income high schools. It is the thing you wish someone had taught you before you were standing in a gas station buying a lottery ticket because you felt like you were drowning. The giving feels clean because there are rules. Not every request gets a yes. The ones that get a yes get support that is structured and followed up and measured. You attend one event per quarter. You stay connected without being consumed. There is no gala circuit. There is no black tie season. There are quarterly board meetings in a conference room and annual reports that you actually read. You give because you want to, not because you feel hunted. That distinction turns out to be everything. Level 7, the builder. 2 years in and you realize the hardest part of having enough money is answering the question of what you are for now. The job is gone. The financial anxiety is gone. The daily structure that used to organize your entire existence is gone. You have more freedom than you have ever had, and it is quietly terrifying. You don't spend your way out of it. You've seen where that goes. Instead, you go looking for the thing. You take 6 months. You try things. A woodworking class, a writing course, 3 weeks volunteering at a food bank, a trip to 4 countries you'd never been to, alone, with no itinerary. You are not running away. You are looking. You find it somewhere unexpected. A small business. Something you could have started with $50,000, but chose to start anyway because you want to build something, not just own something. It doesn't need to succeed. That's the point. You're not doing it for the money. The money already exists. You're doing it because building something with your hands and your decisions and your failures is the only thing that makes the days feel like yours. It does succeed, modestly, quietly. The way things succeed when the pressure is off and you're doing it because you love it. Level 8, the reckoning. 5 years in, you sit down with your wealth manager for the annual review. Your $118 million is now $140 million. The machine ran. You didn't break it. You stare at the number. You blink. You expected it intellectually. Your planner explained compounding until you could explain it back. But seeing the number larger than where you started still does something to you that you weren't prepared for. You think about the other version of this moment, the one where the number on the screen is $41 million and falling. You've read about that version. You've thought about it more than once when the discipline felt exhausting. The discipline was not exhausting. It was just consistent. Your planner asks if you want to adjust anything. Increase the foundation funding. Rebalance the real estate allocation. You discuss it the way you discuss everything now. Calmly, with information, without panic. You make 2 small adjustments. You leave. The reckoning you expected never came. The financial one anyway. The other reckoning arrives quietly on the drive home. You are 42 years old. You are wealthier than you will ever be able to spend. Your family is taken care of. Your foundation is doing real work. Your little business is yours. And you feel something that takes you a long time to name. Not happiness exactly, not relief, steadiness. You have been steady for 5 years. Steady turned out to be the whole answer, and nobody told you it would feel like this. Like not much. Like everything. Level 9, the cost. Doing everything right has a cost. Nobody tells you that part. The people who came asking and heard no are gone. Some of them are angry. Your brother still brings up the restaurant sometimes. Not often, but sometimes. At family dinners when things are quiet and the absence of something sits in the room. You gave him enough to matter. It didn't matter to him the way he wanted. That is not your fault. And you know it is not your fault. And knowing doesn't make the silence across the table any lighter. The friendships that survived are real. There are fewer of them than before. The ones that didn't survive weren't built for this, which means they weren't built for much. You understand that. It still costs something. You date. It is different now, and it was always going to be different now. You've learned to move slowly, to let things develop before the money becomes visible, to look for people who are already building something before they met you. You find one. It takes longer than you thought it would. It's worth the wait. The anonymity holds. Mostly, there are people who know, there are always people who know. But you never became a headline. You never became a cautionary tale. You never became a number in an article about lottery winners who lost everything. You are just a person with a foundation and a small business and a house that is comfortable without being enormous and a life that fits. That is stranger than it sounds, to have everything and feel like a person who has enough. Not more than enough. Enough. Level 10, the quiet. It's been 10 years since you won. The money is not gone. The money is fine. The money will still be there when you are not. You still drive past the gas station sometimes. Same fluorescent lights. Same rack of tickets behind the counter. You watch people walk in and buy their quick picks and fold the tickets into their wallets with that small, desperate spark of hope. You don't want to grab them by the shoulders anymore. You don't want to warn them or save them or tell them what you know. Because what you know isn't really about the money. The money was always simple. A number, a set of decisions, a machine you either build correctly or don't. What you know is about the 90 days of silence. The books you read before you spent $1. The word no, said kindly, said clearly, said without guilt, said again and again until it became the easiest word you owned. What you know is that doing everything right doesn't mean doing everything easily. It means doing the hard thing the same way every time until the hard thing becomes the only thing you know how to do. The cashier who sold you the ticket is still there. Different shift. Same gas station. She still doesn't look up. You are still invisible in the way that ordinary people are invisible. That used to feel like a wound. Now it feels like exactly what you chose. Somewhere right now, someone is handing over $2 for a quick pick. They're imagining the house, the car, the look on their mother's face. They have no idea that the ticket is the easy part. They have no idea that what comes after is just a long series of choices and that the choices are the whole thing. They'll figure it out, or they won't. The cycle continues.